Angie with Peach Orchard Creations, and today is the start of week 2 of Quilt Camp QAL 2021, and we get to actually do our first block today, and that is the friendship bracelet block. Its shape is squares, and I'm going to show you how to cut the material and how to piece the 9 patch, focusing on nested seams and chain piecing. That way you can waste less thread and have a cool way to get piecing done a little bit faster. So let's dive right in. So first off, I've decided this is my fabric setup for this one, fabric A, B, C, D, and E, and my background fabric. And I always like to start off by kind of ironing down. I have my mini Aliso project iron, my wool mat, and I just like to give it a good crisp iron. If I have any stubborn seams, I'm going to use the flatter spray by Soak Wash. Favorite scent is Pineapple Grove. It smells like summer magic, honestly. And get cut this way. So I cut my fabric off of a folded set like this always. I just kind of get this a little close to the fold, but I don't really worry about it. I'm going to make my straight line here. Alrighty, then I flip, and I'm going to cut what it suggests for me to cut. I like this Missouri Star ruler. You can use really anything. My other favorite is Creative Grids. Always a Boss ruler for sure. Then look, I just fold this right back in my box. How simple is that? So you saw there, I made my first clean cut. I rotated it. Then I can use this clean edge that I made originally to make my second clean edge. And then now when I go to cut the squares needed for this block, I just line up. I can cut off the selvage, and then I can rotate. I probably won't show the cutting for every block, but I am showing this block because it's the first block, and we do have some newbies here. And so I want to make sure that I'm giving you a good detailed edition of how I would do it. That way you can kind of know what's going on. Concentrate. And you see me cut off the selvage edge first, because that way as I cut squares, I need an odd number for this one, so I can take this out, and then I'll still have this big long piece I can use later in the quilt along. If I need to cut off this color again in this size, or in a smaller size, I have this strip available. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut my other squares because it's pretty much the same method for the other 3 colors, and then I'll be back to show you some piecing. Has us make 2 9-patch blocks out of 2 different color schemes to start off with, so fabric A and fabric B. And thankfully squares are super easy, so you just line them up here. You can pin here and here if you desire to. I'm not a pinner, so you know, that's just me, but if it makes you more comfortable, throw some pins in there. Lower my presser foot, and away we go. So here's where the chain piecing part comes in. I have just sewn this on here. Now I can do one of 2 things. I can get another set together for the next row in the 9-patch as the pattern shows, and I can either raise my presser foot and pull this forward to give myself a little more thread in between the 2 pieces, or I could have just left my presser foot down and fed the next one through like this. So I just line it up and feed it on through. Your feed dogs will grab it, and then you can feed it right into your machine. And this little bit right here is chain piecing, so you don't waste any thread. Especially on this machine where I don't have an automatic thread cutter. I waste almost 3 inches of bobbin and top thread every time I cut my thread or pull it out to cut my thread. So I'll show you all that in just a second. So there you go. I raise my presser foot, and see, all that thread is going to be at the start, but instead I saved all that thread right there. So that's a super nifty way to save on thread. I do always suggest, oh, I forgot scissors again. I'll just use my rotary cutter. I do always suggest to press between each seam. Since this one is a 9 patch, you don't necessarily have to, but just go ahead and the top row says to press towards color B, same with the bottom row. Super pumped, y'all, about this quilt camp, because during this quilt camp you'll have a chance to win soap wash, flatter spray, a mini Oliso iron, and just we have so many good sponsors. Like, that's the best part, I swear, about this whole thing, is the sponsors are killer. Okay, so there we go. I have sewed this one together. I've pressed my seam as it dictates to the right. See how the seam goes to the right? Well, it's backwards, but you get it. And then now I can throw on my other color, and I can chain piece again right here. So move your threads out of the way if they want to move. Good Lord. Okay. And again, we're just sewing squares together. Lots of straight lines. Oh, lower my foot. Sorry, my other machine, when I press my foot pedal down, it lowers my feet for me, so I forget a lot. Unfortunately, on this machine, to lower my feet dogs, or my presser foot manually. Again, chain piecing, just feeding it straight in there. That way I don't waste any. And now I've got my 3 rows done. So chain piecing is super fun, especially when you have a very repetitive pattern. Is that the right word? When your pattern repeats a lot and you have to sew a lot of things together in a row, super thread saving. And jump over here to the iron, and we're going to press. Excuse me, y'all. I cannot stop coughing. Press the seams. You can always set your seam. This is, people say when you iron it like this, well, it's how you sewed it. That's setting your seam, and then you can press it. I mean, I do think it's helpful, but not a necessity. Sorry, I have such bad allergies. And last one. Set it. And the pattern tells you which direction to iron these, so just follow the pattern. Alrighty, so here is the cool part about nesting seams. I have my top row here, and then this is gonna be my next row. If you can tell, this way, when I fold these over to sew them together, I am now going to have a nested seam. And all a nested seam means is one seam is folded one direction while the other seam is folded the other direction, and now those seams can bump right up next to each other. So when I sew these, they'll have a nice crisp corner because they are nested together. So it literally is just like a cheater way to make sure your seams line up fantastic every time. Over here, press that down, and let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and press the seam open. It's not indicated to do that in the pattern, but I'm gonna do that just because I know later when I do the next phase in the pattern after the 9 patches, this will be helpful for me. I sprayed a little bit of that flatter wash. It is a starch-free pressing spray, and it really does make everything lay flatter. I love it. And it's my favorite scent, Pineapple Grove. It smells like summer magic. So freaking good. Okay, and nested seams will give you these crisp, clean points every time. So super handy trick, super useful. And we're gonna do the same thing to add the bottom row. Again, you can pin if it makes you more comfortable to pin. Pin away. I'm just not a pinner. Set your seam. And then, like I said, I am pressing this seam open because later when I cut it, when I chop up the 9 patch for this pattern, it'll be a little more useful for me to have it open so then I can nest some more seams as we get to that point. And there is my beautiful, crisp 9 patch. Ta-da! So there it is. There are all the wonderful little points. All of my crisp, nice, clean corners all matched up and ready to go. So I'll repeat this process with chain piecing and nesting my seams with colors C and D, and then I'll be right back. So now we have our 9 patches. I love these colors, and it's time to chop them up. Okay, so now on to the next step of the pattern. We need to cut these apart so we can sew them back together in a different way. Line it up. I have to stand or bad things will happen. And I've got nice pressure straight down on the ruler and straight up and down pressure with the rotary cutter. And there we go. Scariest part of the whole day. There we go. And we're gonna do the same thing with this beautiful block. Get it all laid out pretty, and then we're just gonna cut it in half. Sometimes they'll do this weird thing where it's like it stretches a little. Don't stress. Just as you get down there, try to keep some pressure because you can see it's a little wonky, but just take a breath. It'll be fun. Boom. And again, magic. Now we get to put it all back together again. Now I get to kind of lay them out how they will be sewn together. Just remember the big square goes in the center. I know graphics can be really confusing for some people, but you can do it. These are great graphics. And so that's how it will be laid out. And then we're gonna sew on this seam. So just fold this over and see how I pressed my seams open earlier? Now I'll be able to nest these seams like this so I can get crisp, clean corners again. So let's do that. Also another tip, always start sewing on a corner like this, like a 90 degree, instead of these little corners, because these little corners sometimes will get caught up in your feed dogs because it'll only catch on one feed dog instead of both. So here I could start sewing these together on this end or this pointier end. I'm gonna choose this end because both my feed dogs are gonna catch it. Again, nesting my seams, and you can chain piece these 2 pieces as well. So on this seam, I pressed towards the dark side, towards the blue and the pink. So if I want to do that same thing again, I'm going to put the blue and the pink side up And then I can press towards the dark side. And now this center seam, this center point, it will nest. Getting crazy up here at the top, I don't know why. Okay. All right, so fold those over. And now by doing that, I can nest this center seam like that, and it'll be wonderful. Also, earlier where I pressed these seams open, now if I press this main seam open, I'll have even less bulk, which is super nice, especially if you're quilting this yourself, or if you're sending it to a long armor. The long armor will always appreciate less bulk in a block. So, and for me, a little trick I use, I just drag my fingernail along the seam. Of course, I do have not fake nails, but I do get my nails done. I have dip on my nails, so they are a little stronger than the normal nail, but I just use that to drag out, sorry, my allergies. I use that to drag out my seam, to get it open. I find this gives me super crisp open seams. You're either an open seamer or you're not. And it's okay if you're not, just press it back, oops. If you're not, and go on. So here's our block all finished up. I just love it. I love the simplicity of it, but also the eye-catching nature of it. And I love the fact that it does remind me of those woven friendship bracelets that we used to always make at camp. So, reminder to be entered in this week's quilt giveaway. Make sure you post a picture of your finished block by Sunday night before the next Monday. And make sure you're following our sponsors for this week's giveaway, K. Marie Quilt Co. and Homemade Emily Jane, over on Instagram. And share with us your blocks. We cannot wait to see them. We are so excited to do this with you. And until next week, happy quilting.